They insult you. They leave you. They lie to you. But what if I told you, they can't truly hurt you unless you let them? The Stoics knew this over 2,000 years ago. And today, I'll show you why nothing can affect you, once you master these 10 timeless principles. Life is full of chaos. People disappoint us. Plans fall apart. Pain is inevitable. But suffering? That's a choice. The ancient Stoics Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they faced war, exile, betrayal, and death. Yet they remained unshaken. How? Through principles carved in silence, practiced in hardship. Today, I'll share with you 10 Stoic principles so powerful, that once you understand them, nothing, no insult, no failure, no loss can truly affect you. 1. You control your mind, not the world. I remember one morning, years ago, when everything seemed to go wrong. I was in my late 40s. My car wouldn't start. I spilled hot coffee on my only clean shirt. I missed an important meeting at work. And just when I thought the day couldn't get any worse, I came home to find my teenage son arguing with his mother, slamming doors, saying things no father ever wants to hear. I sat there in silence, completely drained. At that moment, I felt like the whole world was against me. Everything, people, machines, even time seemed out of control. And worse, I felt helpless, powerless, angry. But later that night, when things had quieted down, I picked up a small book a friend once gave me, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I opened it randomly and read, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." I read that line 5 times. 10 times. Slowly. Letting it sink in. That was the moment something shifted inside me. I realized I'd spent most of my life trying to control things I never truly could. My job. My kids. The weather. People's opinions. Their moods. Their mistakes. I was fighting storms that were never mine to calm. But my mind? My thoughts? My reactions? That was mine. So I started small. The next morning, when traffic was backed up and I felt my jaw tighten, I whispered to myself, "This isn't about traffic. This is about how I choose to feel right now." When someone cut me off in the parking lot, I paused, took a breath, and reminded myself, they control their actions. I control my peace. It wasn't easy. It never is. But day by day, I noticed something. The world didn't change. People still acted rudely. Deadlines still got missed. Kids still said hurtful things. But I didn't break anymore. And that was real power. You see, we often think strength means being able to push harder, yell louder, do more. But the Stoics taught something different. Real strength is inner stillness. It's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need the world to behave in order to stay calm. And maybe you've felt like me. Maybe you've had days where nothing goes right, and the weight of the world sits on your chest. If so, I hope you hear this: you can't control the storm, but you can control the sail. The truth is, you don't need the world to bend in your favor. You just need to reclaim your mind. Start small. One breath at a time. One choice at a time. Choose to respond, not react. Choose peace over control. And over time, the chaos outside will lose its grip on the calm inside. And once you grasp this first Stoic truth, the rest begins to make sense. Because when you accept that you can't control everything, you also learn what truly matters. That brings us to the next lesson, one that changed the way I see pain and discomfort. Pain is inevitable. But suffering is a choice. 2. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. I used to think that pain was the enemy. When I was younger, I did everything I could to avoid it. I worked hard, tried to stay ahead, avoided conflict, kept people at arm's length just to protect myself. I thought if I played life safe, I could somehow escape the hurt. But pain still came. It came the day my father passed. It came when my best friend stopped returning my calls. It came in quiet ways too: loneliness, regret, moments when I looked in the mirror and wondered where the time went. I remember one night. I was sitting alone in my kitchen. The house was quiet. My kids had moved out. My marriage had ended the year before. And as I stirred a pot of soup, something inside me just broke. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy. The memories, the could-haves, the what-ifs, all of them came rushing in. I dropped the spoon, leaned on the counter, and whispered, "Why does it still hurt?" That was when I remembered something I once read by Seneca: we suffer more in imagination than in reality. At first, I didn't understand. But that night, I did. The pain, the facts were real. I had lost things. I had made mistakes. That was life. But the suffering? That came from replaying those moments over and over in my head. From wishing it had been different. From resisting what had already happened. You see, pain visits us all. It knocks on every door, rich or poor, young or old. We can't avoid it. It's part of the human experience. But suffering is the story we tell ourselves about that pain. It's the echo we let grow louder. It's the resistance. The refusal to accept. The clinging to why me, and it's not fair. The Stoics didn't pretend pain wasn't real. They weren't cold or robotic. They just refused to give pain more power than it deserved. So I started practicing that. When something hurt, I didn't run. I didn't distract myself. I sat with it. I said, "This hurts. And that's okay." Then I breathed. I reminded myself, this is pain, but I don't have to suffer. And slowly, something changed. I became softer but not weaker. I became stronger but not harder. Because when you stop fearing pain, it loses its grip on you. And maybe you're carrying something too: a grief, a wound, a scar. If you are, I want to tell you this: you're not broken. You're just human. The pain may stay for a while. But the suffering? You can let it go. Gently. Slowly. With kindness. And when you do, you make space for something else, something the Stoics valued deeply. Clarity. Control. Calm. Which brings us to the next truth: focus only on what you can control. 3. Focus only on what you can control. I used to spend so much energy trying to control everything. My job. My finances. My children. The way people saw me. If something didn't go the way I planned, I blamed myself, or worse, I blamed others. And when things spun out of control, I felt like I was drowning in my own frustration. I remember one spring evening, my daughter called me from college, crying. She had failed an exam, felt lost, and said, "Dad, I don't know what I'm doing anymore." I tried to stay calm, offered advice, reminded her how smart she was. But after we hung up, I just sat there staring at the phone, helpless. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to make it all better. But I couldn't. That's when a quiet truth hit me: I can't live her life for her. I can't protect her from the world. And the more I tried to control what was never mine to control, the more I suffered. That night, I opened a small notebook where I'd copied quotes from the Stoics. And this one stood out: some things are up to us, and some are not. Epictetus. It's simple. But in those words is a lifetime of wisdom. You see, there are only a few things in this world that truly belong to us: our thoughts, our choices, our reactions. Everything else, what people say, what the market does, what storms roll in, that's not ours to hold. When I finally understood that, it was like putting down a heavy bag I didn't even know I'd been carrying. So now, when I feel anxious or overwhelmed, I pause and ask myself a simple question: is this within my control? If the answer is no, I let it go. And if the answer is yes, I act with calm and clarity. It's not about giving up. It's about letting go of illusions. Because pretending you can control everything is exhausting. But focusing only on what you can control, that's where peace lives. I began applying this to small things. When someone cut me off in traffic, I focused on my breath. When my boss raised his voice, I chose silence over argument. When plans changed, I chose acceptance over resistance. And you know what? Life didn't suddenly become perfect. But I became more steady, less reactive, more grounded. So if you're watching this, and you're tired of trying to hold the whole world together, take a breath. Put down what isn't yours. And hold tight to what is, your mind, your response, your next step. The Stoics knew that control isn't about power, it's about wisdom. And when you focus only on what you can control, you stop wasting your life on what you can't. And this clarity, this inner stillness, prepares you for what comes next, because life won't always go your way. There will be pain, discomfort, challenges. But what if you could welcome them? That's the next lesson. Expect hardship. Embrace it. 4. Expect hardship. Embrace it. I used to believe that once I had everything figured out, my job, my family, my health, life would finally become smooth. That was the dream, wasn't it? Work hard, be a good person, save enough, and then, life would ease up. But reality has a different rhythm. Because no matter how careful you are, life still knocks. Sometimes gently. Sometimes like a punch to the gut. I still remember when I lost my job at 52. The company had downsized. I'd been there for almost 20 years. I gave it everything. Stayed late. Showed up early. Skipped vacations. And then, one Friday afternoon, I was handed a small box and a forced smile. That weekend, I sat in my garage, staring at old family photos, wondering, how did I end up here? It felt like failure. Like life had betrayed me. But over time, through long walks, late night journaling, and quiet reflection, I came to see something I hadn't seen before. The hardship was the lesson. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus was born into slavery. Seneca was exiled. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while grieving children he buried too young. And yet, they didn't curse their struggles. They leaned into them. They embraced them as training. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Epictetus, that line stayed with me. Because growth often looks like failure in the moment. Hardship isn't a punishment. It's preparation. It's life shaping you into something stronger, quieter, wiser. After I lost that job, I started waking up early, reading again, writing again, reconnecting with who I was before the titles, the meetings, the rush. And a year later, I found work I actually loved. It paid less but fed me more. And I'll say this plainly, if I hadn't lost everything, I would have never found myself. So now, when trouble comes, and it still does, I remind myself, this is the path. Not the detour. Hardship is the fire that burns away what isn't essential. It humbles you. Refines you. And if you let it, it transforms you. So if you're in a season of struggle, don't run from it. Don't curse it. Lean into it. Ask, what is this trying to teach me? Because comfort may feel good, but it rarely changes you. Hardship does. And when you stop fearing the hard things, you begin to live with a new kind of freedom. A freedom that isn't shaken by storms because you've already walked through them. That's the Stoic way. And once you learn to embrace life's challenges, you'll begin to see something else clearly. everything, every success, every failure, even every pain is temporary. That's the next lesson we'll walk through, together. 5. Everything is temporary. There's a photo I keep in my wallet. It's old now, corners worn, colors faded. It's me and my 2 kids, standing in front of a rusty old camper we used to take out every summer. We didn't have much back then. Money was tight. The air conditioner barely worked. And we slept on creaky foam mattresses that made our backs ache in the morning. But we laughed. We huddled together during thunderstorms. We chased fireflies. We made memories I never thought would fade. And now, those little kids, they're grown. One's across the country, the other just got married. And that camper? Long gone. It hits me sometimes quietly, unexpectedly, how fast it all passed. The hard days I thought would never end. The sweet moments I thought would last forever. They're all temporary. That's one of the core teachings of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It sounds heavy, even dark. But to the Stoics, it wasn't morbid. It was freeing. Because when you truly realize that everything is temporary, the pain, the joy, the people, the seasons, something shifts inside you. You stop clinging. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You start living with more intention. I think about the nights I used to lie awake worrying about bills, or replaying awkward conversations in my head. Now I ask myself, will this matter in 5 years? Most of the time, the answer is no. Sometimes even 5 days is generous. When you embrace impermanence, you learn to let go faster. You forgive easier. You cherish more. That annoying coworker? One day, you'll barely remember their name. That ache in your chest? It will soften. That joy you feel in your grandchild's laugh? It won't last forever, so let it sink in, right now. Nothing lasts forever. And that includes the bad days too. When I was younger, I thought strength was about holding on. But now, in my 50s, I realize true strength is learning how to let go. Gently. Fully. Without regret. The Stoics didn't fear death because they learned to honor life. Not just the big milestones, but the tiny, quiet moments. Like the way sunlight hits the table in the morning. Or how your partner brushes your hand without thinking. Everything ends. And because it ends, it matters more. So take the picture. Say the words. Sit in silence with someone you love. Because right now, is already becoming a memory. And once you accept that nothing lasts, you're ready for the next truth the Stoics held close: live by nature. Live by virtue. 6. Live according to nature and virtue. A few years ago, I stood at the edge of a lake near my childhood home. It was early morning. Mist hovered over the water. Trees stood still, their reflections almost perfect. No noise. No hurry. Just stillness. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: aligned. Not with my schedule. Not with my phone. But with something older, quieter, something natural. The Stoics believed we should live according to nature. Not just the trees and the rivers, though they matter too. But our nature, who we are beneath the noise. Marcus Aurelius said, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." He meant we're not separate from the world. We're part of it. And when we live in a way that dishonors others, or ourselves, or the earth, we're out of tune. I spent a long part of my life chasing things that didn't matter. Promotions. Status. Looking successful. But I ignored the voice inside that said, "This isn't who you are." Virtue, to the Stoics, isn't about being perfect. It's about being true. True to what's honest. True to what's kind. True to what's wise. True to what takes discipline even when no one's watching. And when I started living that way, not to impress, but to align, I felt lighter. I didn't need to pretend. I didn't need to explain. I just needed to be. Living according to nature isn't about giving up ambition. It's about asking, is this ambition coming from the right place? Living by virtue isn't about judging others. It's about turning inward and asking, am I living in a way I respect? Because at the end of the day, only you know if you're doing the right thing. And when your actions match your values, there's a peace that nothing can buy. It's not loud. It doesn't shout. It's quiet. Solid. Like standing by that still lake. So if you feel out of rhythm, maybe the answer isn't more noise, more hustle, more pressure. Maybe it's less. Less pretending. Less rushing. Less forcing things to be what they're not. Instead, ask, what would my most honest, wise, and disciplined self do right now? Do that. And do it again tomorrow. Live in harmony with your true self. That's the Stoic path. Not flashy. Not fast. But deeply, beautifully real. And once you begin walking that path, you'll find something else begins to shift. You'll get angry less. Because you'll realize anger is weakness, not strength. That's the next lesson we'll uncover together. 7. Anger is weakness, not strength. There was a time when I believed anger made me strong. When someone cut me off in traffic, I'd slam the horn and curse under my breath. When a coworker dismissed my idea in a meeting, I'd spend the rest of the day quietly stewing. And when my teenage son pushed my buttons, I'd raise my voice not because it helped, but because I didn't know what else to do. I thought being loud meant being in control. But the truth is, I was anything but. It wasn't until one evening after a heated argument with someone I loved that something inside me cracked. The silence that followed was louder than the shouting. And in that silence, I felt it clearly, I hadn't won. I'd lost. That night, I sat alone with a small book of Stoic reflections. I turned to a passage by Marcus Aurelius, how much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it. And I realized, anger doesn't protect us. It poisons us. It doesn't make us strong. It reveals how fragile we've become. Because here's the hard truth, anyone can get angry. Anyone can explode. But real strength is staying calm when the world pushes your buttons. Real strength is being able to feel the fire rise inside you and choosing not to feed it. That doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become deliberate. The Stoics didn't ignore anger. They faced it. But they understood it for what it was, a signal, not a solution. I started practicing that. The next time someone spoke sharply to me, I paused. Instead of reacting, I asked myself, what's really behind their words? Are they hurting? Are they afraid? That small pause, just a breath or two, gave me space. Space to choose peace over pride. Compassion over control. And over time, something beautiful happened. My relationships softened. My stress dropped. My dignity grew. Because when you stop letting anger run your life, you start reclaiming your peace. It's not always easy. Even now, I slip. But when I do, I remind myself, anger is easy. Calm is earned. So if you find yourself rising in frustration, tightening your fists, feeling the words build behind your lips, try this: breathe. Pause. And ask yourself, is this who I want to be? If the answer is no, you already have the power to choose differently. The Stoics believed that control over the self is the highest form of power. Not control over others. Not control over outcomes. But over the impulses within. And when you master that, you no longer live for approval, or applause, or reaction. You begin to live from something deeper. Which leads us to the next lesson: don't seek approval. Seek inner alignment. 8. Don't seek approval. Seek inner alignment. I used to care a lot about what people thought of me. Every time I walked into a room, I wondered if I looked successful enough. Every word I said in meetings I replayed later, worried if I sounded smart. Even with friends, I sometimes agreed just to avoid conflict, even when my heart said otherwise. I thought that was connection. But it wasn't. It was performance. And the more I sought approval, the further I drifted from myself. It wasn't until a quiet conversation with an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in years, that I started to realize what I'd been doing. We were sitting on his back porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees. He looked over and said, "You know, you've always had this calm presence. But sometimes, it feels like you're trying to be what people want, not who you really are." I didn't say anything right away. Because deep down, I knew he was right. That night, I came across a line from Epictetus that pierced straight through me: if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity. It was hard to hear. But I needed to hear it. The Stoics believed that we're not here to be liked, we're here to live in alignment with our values. Approval from others comes and goes. One day, they praise you. The next, they forget your name. But when you live according to what you truly believe, with honesty, with courage, with clarity, that stays. Even in the silence. Even when no one's watching. So I started doing small things. Quiet things. I said no to invitations that didn't feel right. I shared my real thoughts, gently, even if they weren't popular. And more than anything, I stopped chasing applause. Instead, I asked myself, do I respect the way I showed up today? Sometimes, the answer was no. But that's okay, because the goal isn't perfection. It's honesty. And here's the truth I've come to learn: you can't truly be free until you stop performing for the crowd. Because the crowd, they change. They forget. They move on. But your conscience, that stays. That speaks. So ask yourself, not do they approve of me, but do I approve of me? The Stoics remind us that your life isn't a show. It's a quiet, sacred path. Walk it with integrity. Not for them. For you. And when you do, you'll begin to find a calm that no praise can give, and no criticism can take away. That calm is the root of inner strength. But to build that strength, you have to train it. Which leads us to the next lesson: practice voluntary discomfort. 9. Practice voluntary discomfort. I used to avoid discomfort like the plague. I liked my coffee hot, my bed soft, my routine predictable. I worked hard so I could earn comfort, because that's what we're told, right? That the goal of life is ease, security, convenience. But over time, I realized something was missing. The easier life got, the softer I became. And not in a good way. Little things started to bother me more. A cold morning. A delayed flight. A change in plans. And I thought to myself, how did I become so fragile? Then I read a line from Seneca that changed how I saw everything: set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself, is this the condition I feared? At first, it sounded extreme. Why would anyone choose discomfort on purpose? But the more I sat with it, the more it made sense. Discomfort is a teacher. When you practice it on your terms, it loses its power over you. So I started small. I took cold showers not every day, just once a week. I skipped a meal occasionally, not to punish myself, but to prove I didn't need constant fullness. I walked when I could have driven. I slept without a pillow. Tiny acts. Barely noticeable to others. But inside, I felt stronger. Because when you voluntarily face small discomforts, you build the muscle for the big ones. You stop being shocked when life gets hard because you've already trained for it. And something else happens too, you become more grateful. That first hot shower after a cold one feels amazing. That simple meal after skipping lunch feels rich. You stop taking the basics for granted. We live in a world that tells us comfort is everything. But the Stoics knew better. They trained their minds like soldiers. Because they understood, when you practice hardship in peace, you suffer less in war. And at this stage of life after 40, 50, or more, we've all had our share of real challenges. Loss, illness, uncertainty. So why not meet those moments prepared? Voluntary discomfort doesn't make you miserable. It makes you resilient. Not hard. Not bitter. But ready. And that readiness, it gives you the kind of confidence no luxury ever will. So ask yourself today, what's one small discomfort you can choose not to suffer, but to strengthen? Because the stronger you are inside, the less you fear what's outside. And when your foundation is that strong, you begin to live with purpose, not habit. Which brings us to the final lesson: reflect daily. Live deliberately. 10. Reflect daily. Live deliberately. I used to live on autopilot. Wake up. Work. Eat. Sleep. Repeat. Days blended into weeks. Weeks into months. And before I knew it, years had passed. I was doing things, but not really living. I wasn't asking the deeper questions. Was I proud of the man I was becoming? Did I speak with kindness today? Did I let fear drive my choices? I didn't stop to think. Until life made me stop. It was after a health scare in my early 50s. Nothing too serious, but enough to shake me. I sat in the waiting room, staring at the wall, and thought, if this was it, would I feel complete? The answer? No. I'd been too busy surviving to ask if I was truly living. That was the moment I started keeping a small journal. Nothing fancy. Just a few lines each night. Questions like, what did I learn today? What triggered me and why? Did I live according to my values, or did I drift? The first few weeks, it felt awkward. But slowly, it became sacred. A quiet space to meet myself. Not with judgment, but with honesty. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, wrote his reflections in private. Not to impress others, but to anchor himself. His meditations weren't meant for anyone's eyes. And yet, 2,000 years later, they're still changing lives. He wrote, "Let each thing you would do, say, or intend be like that of a dying person." Strong words. But what he meant was this: live with intention. Don't wait for permission. Don't waste time on things that don't matter. Because none of us know how long we have. So I ask you, friend, when was the last time you truly sat with yourself? Not to plan. Not to scroll. But just to reflect. 5 minutes. 10. That's all it takes. But in that space you reconnect with something rare: clarity. You start seeing what really matters. You forgive faster. You let go of what no longer serves you. And you begin to live not by habit, not by fear, but by choice. That is what it means to live deliberately. The Stoics didn't promise an easy life. But they gave us a path to a meaningful one. A life of discipline. Of courage. Of peace. Not perfect but aligned. And it begins with small, daily acts. A breath. A question. A pause. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, did I live well today? If the answer is no, there's always tomorrow. And if the answer is yes, smile, and do it again. This is the power of reflection. This is how you become unshakable. You've come this far. And if you're still here, I believe something inside you is ready. Ready to live a little more calmly. A little more bravely. a little more intentionally. The Stoics didn't write books to impress. They wrote to remind themselves of what matters because life is short, and the noise is endless. But the truth is simple: you can't control the world. But you can control your mind. You can choose peace over chaos, discipline over desire, presence over distraction. These 10 Stoic principles are not just ideas. They are anchors, tools, lifelines in a world that never stops shaking. You won't get it perfect. None of us do. But every day is a new chance to realign. So tonight, pause, breathe, and ask yourself gently, who do I want to be tomorrow? Then, take one small step toward that answer. If this video spoke to you, please take a moment to white heavy checkmark like, so this message reaches more souls who need it. White heavy checkmark subscribe, for more timeless wisdom and quiet strength. White heavy checkmark comment, tell me, which of the 10 principles will you start with today? And if you're ready to go deeper, there's another message waiting for you. Movie camera watch next. 90% of life problems are because you're ignoring these life lessons. Stoicism. Insert link or end screen. Thank you for being here. Thank you for walking this path with me. Until next time, stay steady, stay strong, and stay true. He smiled when I cried. And in that moment, I realized not everyone with a kind face has a kind soul. Some people don't hurt you by accident. They enjoy it. They study your weakness and then smile as they destroy you. We all make mistakes in judging people. Some wear masks so perfect, you'd never suspect what hides underneath. They don't scream or hit. They slowly drain your joy, your peace, your purpose. But a Stoic doesn't run from this truth, we observe it with clarity. Today, I'll share 5 signs you're not just dealing with a difficult person, but someone evil, not by accident, but by choice. And most importantly, how to protect your peace without losing your soul. Sign 1, they find joy in your pain. I still remember the day I lost my job. 20 years with the company. I gave it everything: long nights, missed birthdays, skipped vacations. And then, just like that, they called me into a small room, handed me a severance check, and told me it was nothing personal. I was devastated. I came home, sat on the porch, staring at the ground. My hands were shaking. My wife brought me some tea, and I tried to hold myself together. Later that evening, I called a friend, someone I'd known since college. I told him what happened, expecting at least a kind word. But instead of empathy, he chuckled. Just a little. But I heard it. He said something like, "Wow, didn't think you'd be the one to get canned first." I laughed it off, said something dry like, "Yeah, life's full of surprises." But inside, it felt like a knife turning. You see, when someone truly cares, your pain touches their heart. But when someone secretly envies you, your pain lights them up inside. That moment stayed with me, not because I lost the job, but because I saw a truth I'd ignored for years. Seneca once wrote, "It is the mark of an evil man to feel joy in the misfortunes of others." Not anger. Not indifference. Joy. There are people, maybe even close to you, who seem warm on the outside, but inside, they cheer when you fall. They won't always show it outright. Sometimes it's in the delay before they say "I'm sorry." Sometimes it's in the way they ask questions, not to comfort, but to gather details and share your story with others. Sometimes it's in the forced smile, or the way they change the subject too fast. I used to ignore these signs. Tell myself, they're just awkward, or maybe I'm too sensitive. But the older I got, the more I realized protecting my peace meant trusting what I feel, not just what I see. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the mind adapts and turns to its own purposes. The obstacle to our acting, the impediment to action, advances action. In other words, even betrayal, even pain, can become fuel for wisdom. After that incident, I stopped chasing fake friendships. I started watching how people react to my struggles, not just my success. Because here's the truth, evil doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes, it looks like a friend who smiles too wide when you suffer. If you've ever shared a heartbreak, only to feel worse after talking to someone. If you've ever looked into a person's eyes and seen satisfaction instead of sorrow. You're not crazy. You're seeing clearly now. And once you start to see clearly, you begin to notice the next sign even more. They twist truth into manipulation. And that's where things get dangerous. Let's talk about that. Sign 2, they twist truth into manipulation. Sometimes, it doesn't start with a lie. It starts with a question. Are you sure that's what happened? Maybe you're just overthinking things. Or worse. I never said that. You must have misunderstood. It's subtle. So subtle, in fact, that you begin to doubt your own memory, your judgment, and eventually, yourself. I once had a colleague, let's call him Mark. He was charming. Smart. Always smiling. The kind of guy who'd bring coffee to meetings and remember your birthday. But he had a strange habit. Every time I shared something important, especially something that didn't make him look good, he'd shift the story. If I told our boss an idea was mine, Mark would chime in and say we came up with it together. If I raised a concern in private, he'd later bring it up in public with a spin that made it sound like I was the one being difficult. It was slow. Like erosion. And just like that, people around me started looking at me differently, unsure of who to trust. Even I started wondering. Am I the problem here? Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you, but how you interpret it that matters. But what happens when someone else rewrites the interpretation for you? What happens when they twist your reality? That's not just dishonesty. That's manipulation. And here's what makes it so dangerous. Manipulative people don't need to lie outright. They just distort things enough so you question your footing while they stand firm. They plant small seeds of doubt. They shift the goalposts. They hide behind politeness while quietly pulling your strings. Looking back, I wish I had trusted my instincts earlier. There were signs, the way Mark dodged responsibility, the way he always had an excuse, the way he made others feel small while appearing helpful. But I wanted to believe the best in him. I thought, maybe it's just office politics. I stayed silent. And silence, I learned, is the soil where manipulation grows. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. So I stopped playing the game. I began writing everything down. Emails, conversations, decisions. I kept a clear record, not to accuse, but to protect my mind from being twisted. Most importantly, I stopped explaining myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. Because sometimes, clarity is your greatest shield. If someone in your life keeps making you feel like the story keeps changing. If every disagreement somehow ends with you apologizing. If they always have the upper hand in conversations, even when they were the ones who started the fire. Then pause. Not to fight, but to observe. A person who distorts the truth doesn't just steal your words. They steal your peace. And once you start protecting that peace, you'll begin to notice something even more unsettling. Sometimes, they don't just lie. They pretend to care. Next, we'll talk about the third sign, they fake empathy, to stay in control. Stay with me. Sign 3, they fake empathy for control. Sometimes the most dangerous people don't yell. They whisper. They lean in with soft eyes. They say things like, I just want to help you. You know you can trust me. I care. I really do. But somehow, after every conversation, you feel smaller. Weaker. Like you owe them something. Years ago, I went through a divorce. It was one of the hardest times in my life. Lonely dinners. Sleepless nights. An empty side of the bed. In the middle of it all, a co-worker, let's call her Diane, started checking in often. She'd bring me coffee in the morning. Ask how I was really doing. Even stayed late after work just to keep me company. At first, I was grateful. Her kindness felt like a warm blanket on a cold day. But little by little, things changed. She'd remind me, you know, I'm the only one who's really been here for you. She'd hint that others at work were talking behind my back except her, of course. And every time I made a decision she didn't agree with, she'd withdraw. Go cold. Sometimes for days. That wasn't kindness. That was control wearing the mask of care. Seneca once wrote, "He who does good with the hope of reward, or to gain influence, is not truly good." True empathy doesn't bind you. It frees you. It helps you stand up, not make you more dependent. But fake empathy, it's strategic. It's built on emotional debt. And the goal isn't to support you, it's to own a piece of you. When you're vulnerable, it's easy to confuse attention with love. But the Stoics teach us, don't judge the appearance. Judge the intent. Epictetus said, first, learn to know the difference between what appears good and what is truly good. I eventually saw through Diane's behavior. It wasn't one big moment. It was the accumulation of little things that didn't feel right. So I stepped back. Set boundaries. And when I did, the warmth disappeared instantly. Because without my pain to feed on, she had no reason to stay. That was the day I learned, some people don't help you heal, they help you stay broken, because it keeps you close. So if someone keeps checking in, but it always ends with you feeling guilty. If they say they care, but you feel trapped instead of safe, it might not be empathy. It might be control. And once you reclaim that control, you'll notice something even colder in the next type of person: they never feel guilt. They never say sorry. Because deep down, they don't think they've done anything wrong. Let's talk about that next. Sign 4, they never feel guilt or remorse. There's something chilling about someone who hurts you and feels nothing. No apology. No hesitation. Just a blank stare. Or worse, a shrug. I once trusted someone deeply. We'd known each other for years, family dinners, holidays, birthdays. He was like a brother to me. Until the day I found out he had been lying behind my back, for months. He wasn't just hiding something. He was using what I shared in confidence to get ahead in business, in social circles, even in my own family. When I confronted him, I expected resistance. But I didn't expect this. He looked at me, calm as ever, and said, "Well, you should have known better." That was it. No sorry. No regret. Just blame placed squarely at my feet. I remember standing there, stunned. Not because of what he did, but because of how little it seemed to matter to him. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That quote echoed in my head for days. I could have fought back. Told people everything. Burned the bridge and walked away victorious. But that's not the Stoic way. Instead, I sat quietly with the truth. And I asked myself, what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? Not someone cold. Not someone vengeful. Just someone free. People who lack remorse are often ruled by pride. They see admitting fault as weakness. But in truth, remorse is not weakness, it's a sign of conscience. And conscience is the foundation of character. Epictetus said, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." The actions of others can hurt, yes. But what destroys us is when we expect remorse from someone who has none to give. You see, we carry pain not just from what was done to us, but from waiting for an apology that will never come. If you're over 40, maybe you've felt this too. A friend, a sibling, a spouse, someone who crossed the line and then acted like you were the one making things complicated. And no matter how many times you replayed the moment, they never owned it. Because deep down, they never cared. When you see the sign, the absence of guilt, it's not your job to fix them. It's your job to free yourself. Not for them. For you. Because the truth is, people who feel no guilt often create cycles of emotional damage. They drain your empathy. They use your forgiveness against you. And eventually, they numb your ability to trust. That's why you need to be aware of the next and final sign, perhaps the darkest one of all. They isolate you, from truth, from others, and from yourself. All to keep you under control. Let's go there together. Sign 5, they isolate you from truth and peace. It doesn't happen all at once. They don't take everything from you in one big moment. They do it slowly. Quietly. Piece by piece. Until one day, you look around and realize you're standing alone, in a life that doesn't feel like yours anymore. I had a close friend once, let's call her Rachel. She was kind at first. Supportive. Always looking out for me. Whenever I had an issue with someone, a disagreement, a misunderstanding, Rachel would lean in and say, "You know, I've always had a bad feeling about them." Or, "I think they're jealous of you. You should be careful." And I listened. I slowly began pulling away from people I loved, my sister, an old mentor, even my church group. Because Rachel made it sound like they didn't really care. Like only she understood me. I didn't see it at first. I thought she was protecting me. But in reality, she was replacing truth with control. You see, isolation doesn't always come with locked doors. Sometimes, it comes with quiet suggestions, with subtle fear, with the illusion of loyalty. And that illusion? It's the most dangerous part. Because it feels like connection, but it's really possession. Seneca once said, "He who shuts himself away is not a friend, but a prison." The Stoics understood something timeless: true relationships make you more connected, not less. They encourage clarity, not confusion. They help you grow, not shrink. Looking back, I remember one night I sat alone in my kitchen. The phone was silent. No messages. No invitations. No joy. All the people who used to bring light into my life were gone. Not because they abandoned me, but because I'd pushed them away under someone else's influence. That's when I knew I wasn't living in peace. I was living in emotional captivity. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And I had handed that mastery away. Not to violence. Not to cruelty. But to subtle isolation disguised as care. So I made a hard choice. I reached out to the people I'd left behind. I apologized. I listened. And I rebuilt. It wasn't easy. But it was the only way back to truth and peace. So if someone in your life is always the first to plant doubt, if they make you question the people who truly care about you, if their protection comes at the cost of your connection, then step back. And ask yourself, am I growing with this person or slowly disappearing? Because true peace doesn't isolate. It includes. It heals. It frees. And sometimes, the most stoic act of strength is to walk away from the one who wants to keep you caged, even if they never raised their voice. Let this be your reminder: you don't need permission to reclaim your peace. And maybe, just maybe, that's the exact reason they tried to take it from you. So, maybe as you listen to these 5 signs, a name came to mind. A face. A moment you've been trying to forget, but that still lives somewhere deep in your chest. And maybe for the first time you're beginning to understand. It wasn't your fault. You weren't too sensitive. You weren't imagining it. You were simply in the presence of someone who wore kindness like a costume, but used it to control, manipulate, and isolate. The Stoics never taught us to run from darkness. They taught us to recognize it, accept what we cannot change, and walk in virtue regardless. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So protect your thoughts. Guard your peace. And remember, you don't owe anyone your silence, your doubt, or your suffering. You owe yourself truth. And truth, even when painful, always leads back to freedom. If this video helped you see something more clearly, hit subscribe for more Stoic wisdom and real-life lessons spoken simply, shared with heart. Speech balloon. And if you feel like talking, drop a comment below. You're not alone. Push pin share this with someone who might need it, because sometimes, just one honest conversation can set a person free. Backhand index pointing right. Coming up next, Stoic ways to deal with manipulative people, a guide to protecting your peace with wisdom, not war. You won't want to miss it. Every morning, I used to wake up, already feeling behind. Like I was chasing a life that kept slipping through my fingers. But then I started whispering 9 simple truths to myself, and everything changed. Most people over 40 feel the same quiet ache. We've lived long enough to carry regrets. We've worked hard, but not always smart. And now, we ask, is this it? Or can life still bloom? The ancient Stoics believed, it is not that life is short, but that we waste much of it. Seneca. So I decided to stop wasting mine. I wrote down 9 things to tell myself every day. Not motivational fluff, but powerful Stoic affirmations. Not to feel better, but to live better. Lesson 1, I am capable. I used to wake up with a weight on my chest. Not pain, not fear. Just this quiet, heavy feeling that somehow, I wasn't enough. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, and all the unfinished things from yesterday would flood back into my mind. The email I didn't send. The conversation I avoided. The project I didn't finish again. And under it all, that voice. You know, the one. The one that says, you're falling behind. You're not strong enough. You can't handle this. It took me years, decades, even to realize that voice wasn't telling the truth. It was just echoing my old fears. Fears I'd picked up from failures, from other people's expectations, from a world that loves to measure worth by youth, speed, and success. But I'm over 40 now. And something shifted. One morning, while reading Marcus Aurelius, I came across a line that stopped me in my tracks: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That morning, I closed the book. I stood in front of the mirror. And I said to myself, softly at first, I am capable. Not perfect. Not finished. But capable. Capable of making today better than yesterday. Capable of handling what's in front of me even if I do it scared. Capable of learning, adapting, and moving forward, one steady breath at a time. Let me tell you a simple story. There was a day not long ago when my car broke down, halfway to a meeting I'd spent weeks preparing for. It was raining, my phone was dying, and my shirt was soaked. I could feel the old panic rising, the self-doubt, the helplessness. But instead of spiraling, I paused. I took a breath, and reminded myself, I am capable. I called for help. I rescheduled. I handled it. Not with brilliance, but with calm. And that was enough. You see, being capable isn't about always having the answers. It's about trusting that you'll figure it out when it matters. That you've survived hard things before, and you can do it again. If you're listening to this and you're over 40, maybe you know that feeling too. That creeping doubt that says you missed your chance. That you're too late to start over. Too tired to try again. But here's the truth: you are not too late. You are right on time. Because now, you know more. You've lived more. And your strength is no longer in what you show, it's in what you endure. So, the next time that voice starts whispering in your mind telling you that you can't, that you're not enough, you look back at all the things you've come through, all the storms you've weathered, all the days you got up when it would have been easier to stay down. And you tell yourself, out loud if you must, I am capable. Let that be your anchor, your starting point, the calm voice that steadies you when the world gets too loud. And once you believe that you are truly capable, you'll be ready for the next step, shaping your own reality. Because once you believe in your power, you begin to use it. Lesson 2, I shape my reality. There was a time when I truly believed that life was something that happened to me. I didn't see myself as a participant, just a passenger. Always reacting, always adjusting, always surviving. I'd wake up, scroll the news, check my inbox, and already feel drained. One email could ruin my whole mood. One person's bad energy could ruin my whole day. I blamed traffic, bills, politics, even the weather, for how I felt on the inside. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the outside world that was the problem. It was the way I interpreted it. Then I came across a passage by Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. At first, I thought it sounded too simple. But the more I lived with it, the more it made sense. Think about this, 2 people lose their job on the same day. One spirals into despair. The other says, maybe this is my chance to finally do what I love. Same event. Different meaning. Different outcome. That's when it hit me, I shape my reality. Not with magic, but with meaning. Let me tell you a personal moment that changed everything. A few years ago, I missed my daughter's piano recital. It wasn't because I didn't care, it was because work called, and I made the wrong choice. When I walked through the door that night and saw the look in her eyes, I felt like the worst father in the world. I wanted to blame my boss. Blame the schedule. Blame anything. But instead, I owned it. I sat down, held her hand, and told her the truth, I messed up. But I want to do better. We cried together. Then we laughed. And that night, we played a duet on the kitchen table using just spoons. You see, reality is not what happens. Reality is the story we choose to tell about what happens. I could have told myself, I'm a failure as a father. Instead, I told myself, I made a mistake but I'm choosing a better story starting now. That's how we shape our lives. Not by controlling every event, but by choosing what those events mean to us. Marcus Aurelius put it best, the universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it. When I started embracing this mindset, everything shifted. The traffic jam became time to breathe. The cancelled meeting became a chance to reconnect with my wife. The criticism became a mirror, not a weapon. You're not powerless. Even if your circumstances feel chaotic, you have one thing that can never be taken from you, your response. And when you change your response, you change your reality. So each morning, I now take a deep breath and say, I shape my reality. Not as wishful thinking, but as a reminder that I am not just reacting anymore, I am creating. And when you live this way, you stop waiting for life to get easier, and you start becoming stronger. You begin to notice the space between the event and your reaction. And in that space is where your freedom lives. So the next time something doesn't go your way, pause. Breathe. And remind yourself, this doesn't define me. But how I respond, will. That's the power Stoicism gives us, not to escape life, but to engage with it, deliberately. And once you take ownership of your reality, you begin to walk forward with clarity. Which brings us to the next truth I tell myself each morning: my path is clear. Because once you know who you are, you begin to see where you're going. Lesson 3, my path is clear. There's a strange kind of fog that settles in around middle age. It's not always heavy. Sometimes, it's barely noticeable, just a soft haze that makes everything feel uncertain. I remember when it hit me. I was 44. Had a decent job, a roof over my head, a family that loved me. From the outside, it looked like I had it all figured out. But inside, I felt like I was drifting. Not sinking, but not really sailing, either. Just floating. I'd go through the motions, answer emails, pay bills, smile in meetings. But every now and then, I'd catch my own reflection and think, where are you even going? I didn't have an answer. And that terrified me. That's when I stumbled upon a quote by Seneca. It was simple, but it hit like a hammer: if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. I read it again. Then again. That night, I turned off my phone, sat down with a notebook, and asked myself a question I hadn't faced in years: what do I truly want from the rest of my life? Not what I'm supposed to want. Not what others expect. But what I want deep down. It took time. Hours turned into days. But slowly, something began to form. Not a detailed plan, but a direction. I realized I wanted less noise. More honesty. Work that felt meaningful. Time that felt mine. I wasn't lost. I was just off course. And I needed to steer again. Now, each morning when I wake up, before the day gets loud, I whisper to myself, my path is clear. Even if it's foggy outside, I know where I'm going inside. It doesn't mean I won't get distracted, or that I won't take wrong turns. But I have a compass now, and that changes everything. Let me give you an example. A few months ago, I was offered a higher paying job at another company. On paper, it looked great. More money. Bigger title. But it also meant more stress, less time with family, and a return to the kind of hustle that nearly broke me years ago. 5 years ago, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. But now, I paused. I looked at my compass. And it pointed me elsewhere. I turned it down. And I slept well that night. You see, clarity isn't just about knowing what to chase. It's about knowing what to walk away from. When your path is clear, you stop chasing everything and start focusing on what truly matters. You begin to trust yourself. To move with intention. To say yes with your whole heart, and no without guilt. That's the beauty of Stoic thinking. It doesn't tell you what to want. It simply asks, what's in your control? What do you value? And are you walking in alignment with those values? So if you're feeling stuck, don't panic. Don't force clarity. Instead, sit still. Be honest. And listen. The fog will lift. The path will appear. And when it does, whisper to yourself, my path is clear. That quiet confidence will carry you through uncertainty, through setbacks, through storms. And as you walk that path, remember this next truth, one I hold close every day: I grow stronger daily. Because clarity gives direction, but strength gives you the courage to keep walking it. Lesson 4, I grow stronger daily. I used to think strength meant being unshakable. Always composed. Always certain. Like nothing could touch me. But the truth is, that image isn't real. Real strength isn't loud. It doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from facing what's not fine, and showing up anyway. I learned that the hard way. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting alone in my car after dropping my son off at school. For some reason, I didn't drive away. I just sat there. And I started crying. Not a breakdown. Just a slow unraveling. From stress. From holding it all together. From feeling like I had to be strong for everyone, while quietly falling apart myself. That was the day I realized something important. I'd been measuring my strength by how much I could carry. But Stoicism taught me to measure it by how much I could let go. I remembered something Seneca once said: difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. That's when the idea clicked: strength isn't a moment, it's a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows with use. From that day forward, I started tracking strength differently. Not by how much I achieved, but by how I responded to everyday moments. When I chose to speak calmly instead of snapping, that was strength. When I got up early to take a walk, even when I didn't feel like it, that was strength. When I apologized to my wife after a disagreement, even though pride told me not to, that, too, was strength. Not perfect. Not polished. But powerful, in the quiet way that growth often is. Now, every morning, I say to myself, I grow stronger daily. It reminds me that I don't have to be at my best every single moment. I just have to keep growing. To be a little more patient than yesterday. A little more courageous. A little more honest, especially with myself. And I'll tell you something beautiful about this journey. Once you stop expecting perfection, you start noticing progress. The small wins become visible. You stop beating yourself up for not leaping forward and start celebrating that you're still moving. Some days, you'll take 3 steps forward. Other days, you'll fall flat. But even that fall is part of the process. Because true strength isn't about how far you go, it's about how deeply you grow. One of the biggest changes I've noticed since embracing this idea? I've become more compassionate. Not just with others, but with myself. I've stopped calling myself names in my own mind. Stopped rushing to judgment. Stopped punishing myself for being human. That's the quiet strength Stoicism offers us. Not the kind you show off, but the kind you carry inward. And when you live like that, when you remind yourself, I grow stronger daily, you start to trust that every challenge is shaping you, not breaking you. You become more resilient. More centered. And oddly enough, more at peace. Because now you're no longer racing. You're walking. Step by step. Rooted. Grounded. Growing. And as you walk this steady path, gaining strength from every stumble and every sunrise, you'll come to a powerful realization: the goal is not to be the best. The goal is to honor your journey. And when you do that consistently, you naturally begin to raise your standards. Which brings me to the next truth I whisper every morning: I commit to excellence. Because strength gives you the tools. But excellence shows you how to use them. Lesson 5, I commit to excellence. There was a time not too long ago when I confused excellence with perfection. I thought committing to excellence meant never making mistakes. Always performing. Always winning. But that belief exhausted me. Because no matter how hard I tried, I always felt like I was falling short. Then one evening, while reading Marcus Aurelius, I found this line: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That sentence struck me like thunder. It wasn't about appearing excellent. It was about being excellent quietly, consistently, deeply. Not for applause. Not for recognition. But because it's who I choose to be. Since turning 40, I've begun seeing life through a different lens. I no longer care about looking successful, I care about being true to myself. Being reliable. Being present. Being excellent, in the little things. Let me tell you a story. It was a Thursday morning. Nothing special. I was in line at the grocery store. The man in front of me was elderly, slow, a little confused, struggling to count his change. People behind me were sighing. Impatient. I felt it too. But then something softened in me. I remembered my father in his later years, how even small tasks became mountains for him. So I leaned forward and said, "Take your time. You're doing just fine." Then I smiled. and waited. That moment wasn't big. But it was excellent. Excellence, I've learned, lives in the quiet corners. In how you treat a stranger. In how you speak when no one's listening. In whether you finish what you start, even when no one's watching. When I say, I commit to excellence, I'm not declaring I'll always win. I'm declaring that I'll always show up with intention. That I'll choose integrity over ease. Presence over distraction. Effort over excuses. And yes, there are days when I fall short. When I lose patience. When I slack off. When I slip back into old habits. But commitment doesn't mean perfection. It means beginning again every day. So I wake up and say it, even when I don't feel like it, I commit to excellence. And that simple line pulls me back into alignment. It reminds me that I don't need to compete with others, I need to compete with yesterday's version of me. I don't need to be better than you, I need to be better than who I was last week. And that's enough. The Stoics weren't interested in showy success. They valued virtue, effort, purpose. They believed a good life wasn't measured in achievements, but in how you live and why. So ask yourself, can you be a little more present today? A little more honest? A little more patient, generous, curious? That's excellence. Not the end goal but the way you walk the path. And here's the beautiful part, when you walk that path long enough, with enough honesty and commitment, you become someone who others can count on. Someone who holds steady in chaos. Someone whose quiet discipline becomes contagious. That's the kind of excellence I want. And it begins, not with grand gestures, but with small, daily choices. So say it with me, if you're ready, I commit to excellence. Even if it's imperfect. Even if no one sees it. Even if it takes time. Because the longer you commit to that truth, the more it starts to shape your character. And once you begin living that way, you also begin to reject what holds you back. Which brings me to the next lesson. A hard one but a necessary one: excuses do not define me. Because excellence requires effort. But effort requires ownership. Lesson 6, excuses do not define me. I used to be really good at making excuses. I didn't call them that, of course. I called them reasons. Good explanations. Perfectly valid justifications. Like, I'm too tired. It's not the right time. I'm just not built for this. Maybe next week, next year, someday. And for a while, I believed those lines. Because they kept me safe. Safe from failure. Safe from embarrassment. Safe from growth. But also, safe from becoming the man I wanted to be. You see, excuses are soft. They comfort you. They make you feel better temporarily. But over time, they steal from you. They take your potential, little by little. And they leave you with regret. I remember one afternoon, a few years back, my son asked me to play catch. Just 15 minutes. But I had emails. Phone calls. Work to do. So I said, maybe later, buddy. And I watched the light in his face dim. He said, okay, and walked outside alone. That night, I stared at the ceiling and thought, what did I really choose today? I didn't choose responsibility. I chose an excuse. And I lost a moment I'll never get back. That was the beginning of the shift. I remembered a teaching from Epictetus: it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And I realized, my excuse wasn't about time. It was about fear. Fear that I'd never get everything done. Fear that I couldn't balance life. Fear that if I failed at one thing, it would all fall apart. But Stoicism doesn't leave room for fear to drive the ship. It teaches us to look clearly. To act deliberately. To take full ownership of our lives. So now, each time I catch myself saying, I can't, or I don't have time, I pause. And I ask, is this really true? Or am I letting myself off the hook? Because here's what I've learned, excuses might feel like relief in the moment. But over time, they become a prison. A small, quiet box you build around your own potential. That's why every morning, I stand still for just a moment and say, excuses do not define me. That's my contract with myself. A reminder that I'm not here to make excuses, I'm here to make progress. Even if it's slow. Even if I fail. Even if it's uncomfortable. Because every time I choose to show up instead of shut down, I grow. Every time I do the hard thing, when no one would blame me for walking away, I build something stronger inside. This isn't about hustle culture. This isn't about being tough. It's about being honest. Honest enough to admit when I've been hiding. And brave enough to step forward anyway. And you know what happens when you live this way? You begin to respect yourself. Not for being perfect, but for being responsible. For showing up. For trying again. For becoming the kind of person your younger self needed and your older self will be proud of. So if you've been holding back, if there's something you've been telling yourself you can't do, pause. Breathe. And ask, is this an obstacle or an excuse? You might be surprised by the answer. And once you let go of the excuses, you'll start to feel lighter. More focused. More free. Because when you stop letting excuses define you, you start defining yourself. And that's when something powerful begins to unfold, a sense of confidence that doesn't need to be proven. A quiet strength that others can feel. A purpose that radiates from the inside out. And from that space, you begin to reconnect with something deeper. Not just performance, but potential. Which leads me into the next truth, a declaration I once found hard to say, but now hold close to my heart: I am designed for greatness. Because when you stop making excuses, you start making room for everything you were truly meant to become. Lesson 7, I am designed for greatness. There was a season in my life not that long ago when I stopped dreaming. I didn't even notice it at first. It was subtle. Just a quiet resignation that crept in. Like dust gathering in corners. Like forgetting the sound of your own laughter. Somewhere between the job deadlines, the unpaid bills, the disappointments, and the long nights of quiet exhaustion, I stopped believing I was meant for anything more than just getting by. And then one evening, while sitting in the garage cleaning out an old box of papers, I found a note I wrote to myself when I was 17. It was messy. Folded 4 times. Written in blue ink on lined paper. But the words were clear. I want to do something that matters. I want to be someone who helps people feel less alone. I want to make things that last. I stared at it for a long time. Not because the dream felt too big, but because I'd let it become small. I'd traded wonder for routine, purpose for comfort, meaning for motion. And it made me ask myself, when did I stop believing I was built for more than survival? Later that night, I remembered a quote from Marcus Aurelius: "You were born to do what is right. Don't allow your mind to be a slave." And I realized, maybe greatness wasn't about fame, or wealth, or applause. Maybe greatness is about alignment. Living so closely to your values that people can feel your integrity just by being around you. Maybe greatness is becoming the kind of person who raises the energy of every room you walk into, not by force, but by presence. Since that moment, I started whispering one line to myself every morning: I am designed for greatness. At first, it felt awkward. Like wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. But the more I said it, the more I began to remember who I was before the world told me to play small. Greatness doesn't mean never being afraid. It means acting in spite of fear. It means speaking with courage when silence would be safer. It means showing kindness when cruelty is easier. It means giving your best, even when no one sees it. Being over 40 has given me one gift above all, clarity. Clarity that time is precious. That energy is sacred. That who I choose to be now, is who I'll be remembered as later. I no longer chase someone else's definition of success. I choose my own definition of greatness, being present at the dinner table. Apologizing with sincerity. Building something quietly that serves others. Saying no when I need to protect my peace. Saying yes when it's time to be brave. You are not here by accident. There is something about you, your story, your voice, your experience that the world needs. And it's never too late. Not at 40. Not at 60. Not even at 80. Because the seed of greatness doesn't care about your age, only about your willingness to nurture it. So I say it again, I am designed for greatness. Not to impress, but to serve. Not to rise above others, but to rise above who I used to be. And once you start living with that truth in your chest, you stop seeking permission. You stop hiding. You start stepping forward, not louder, but deeper. And when you do that, you stop being controlled by outside noise. Which brings me to the next lesson, the one that anchors me in a world full of opinions. External opinions do not sway me. Because once you know who you are, you stop needing the world to remind you. Lesson 8, external opinions do not sway me. There's something strange that happens after 40. You stop trying to please everyone, but for some reason, you still care what they think. You still wonder what they're saying when you leave the room. You still replay that awkward moment in your head. You still shrink a little when someone questions your choices, your values, your timing. Even after all this time, the opinions of others can sneak in like a cold draft, just enough to make you uncomfortable, but not enough to make you stand up and close the window. I've lived that tension for years. Trying to be kind, yet firm. Open, yet grounded. Seen, but not controlled. Until one day, I heard a quote that changed me. It was from Marcus Aurelius. He wrote, "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." I read it again. And I felt a little embarrassed. Because it was true. I was letting people who barely knew me have the loudest voices in my mind. And worse, I was letting them shape how I saw myself. So I made a quiet decision that day. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just personal. I will build my own inner citadel. That's what the Stoics called it, the inner fortress. A place inside you that no judgment, no opinion, no gossip can touch. It's not about arrogance. It's not about being closed off. It's about being centered. So now, when someone questions my choices, why I changed careers, why I spend more time at home, why I speak slower and listen longer, I smile. Because they're not living my life. I am. And I no longer need their approval to feel whole. Let me give you a small example. A few months ago, a former co-worker saw me at a bookstore. He looked surprised. "Didn't think you were the type to just walk away from the corporate world," he said. Before, I would have defended myself. Explained everything. Tried to justify. But that day, I just nodded and said, "Yeah, it wasn't for me anymore. But I'm happier now." And I walked away. Light. Free. Because I've realized this, people's opinions are just reflections of their own fears, expectations, and insecurities. What they see in you is often more about them than it is about you. And when you really accept that, you stop arguing. You stop performing. You stop shrinking. You just live. Authentically. Quietly. With integrity. That's what Stoicism invites us to do. To come home to ourselves. To honor the still voice within over the shouting voices outside. So each morning now, I say, external opinions do not sway me. Not because I'm better than anyone. But because I finally trust myself. And that trust, it's earned. from years of showing up, from learning through mistakes, from choosing peace over praise, and purpose over popularity. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the quiet, beautiful life you're building. And the more you walk in that truth, the more magnetic you become. Not because you're seeking attention, but because you're living in alignment. And people can feel that, even if they don't understand it. So let them talk. Let them guess. Let them misunderstand. You keep walking. You keep growing. Because that kind of freedom, the kind that comes from within, is worth more than anyone's approval. And when you finally stop chasing opinions, you start embracing what's right in front of you. Which brings me to the last truth I whisper each morning: I embrace the present moment. Because once the noise fades, all that's left is now. Lesson 9, I embrace the present moment. There was a time in my life when the past had a tighter grip on me than the present ever did. I'd lie awake at night thinking about old mistakes, words I shouldn't have said, chances I didn't take, people I lost because I wasn't brave enough to love them fully. And if it wasn't the past weighing me down, it was the future pulling me forward. What if I don't have enough? What if I fail again? What if time runs out? That's the thing about living in your head. You become a visitor in your own life. One day, my daughter, she was maybe 9, was sitting next to me on the couch, telling me about a story she wrote at school. I was nodding, smiling. But I wasn't really there. My mind was somewhere in an email I hadn't sent, a bill I hadn't paid, a decision I hadn't made. Then she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. She said, "Dad, you're not here." And she was right. I was physically present but emotionally absent. That moment broke something in me. And maybe it healed something too. Later that night, I opened a worn copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And I read, "Do not let your reflection on the whole sweep of life crush you. Do not dwell in the future. Live in the present always." I read it 3 times. Then I closed the book, sat in silence, and let that truth sink in. Since that day, I've been learning to return. Return to now. To the breath I'm taking. To the ground beneath my feet. To the warm mug in my hand, the song on the radio, the laugh of someone I love in the next room. It's not always easy. The mind is tricky, it drifts, it clings, it worries. But every morning, before the world has a chance to pull me in 100 directions, I say to myself, I embrace the present moment. Not because it's always pleasant, but because it's real. The present is the only place where life is actually happening. Where growth unfolds. Where healing begins. Where joy, however quiet, waits patiently to be noticed. And if you're over 40 like me, you know that life speeds up. Years blur. And what used to feel like forever now slips by like morning fog. But here's the gift we often forget we've been given, we still have now. This conversation. This breath. This chance to begin again. You don't need to fix the past before you can be present. And you don't need to have the future figured out to find peace now. You just need to return. Return to your body. To your senses. To the moment unfolding right in front of you. I've learned that being present doesn't mean life gets easier. But it becomes more vivid. More meaningful. More yours. So now, when I sip my morning coffee, I taste it. When my wife speaks, I listen, really listen. When I watch the sunset, I don't take a picture. I just stand there, and breathe. Because that's where life is. Not in the regrets. Not in the what-ifs. But here. Now. And as you let go of what was, and stop chasing what could be, you begin to see the beauty of what is. So say it with me, I embrace the present moment. Hold it. Feel it. Live it. Because it's all we ever really have. And it's more than enough. Person in lotus position. This is the final lesson I tell myself every morning. But it's not the end. It's the beginning of a different kind of living, one rooted in awareness, simplicity, and calm strength. If you've stayed with me through all 9 lessons, thank you. Truly. Now let's close this journey in the next section, with a reflection to carry in your heart, and a reminder that the journey continues. You don't need a new year to start over. You just need a new thought. A new morning. A new whisper. Every day, you have the chance to speak life into yourself. With truth. With wisdom. With stoic calm. Tell yourself what matters. And then live like you mean it. Green circle if this message helped you today, like this video, comment your favorite lesson below, and subscribe to join this journey of deeper living. 10 Stoic Habits to Master Self-Control, even in chaos. Rightward arrow. Watch this video next to learn how to stay grounded, no matter what life throws at you. What if I told you, self-discipline isn't about grinding harder, it's about thinking deeper. Imagine becoming unshakable not because life is easy, but because your mind is trained to face anything. In a world filled with noise, temptation, and distraction, self-discipline has become a lost art. But over 1,800 years ago, a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself each night reminders on how to stay calm, focused, and unbreakable in the face of chaos. He wasn't born with this discipline. He trained it, the same way we train our bodies. Through philosophy. Through daily practice. Through Stoicism. Today, we're diving into 10 Stoic principles that don't just sound wise, they're practical tools to help you regain control, build inner strength, and live with intention. If you've ever struggled to stay consistent, resist distractions, or find purpose, you're not alone. But you're about to learn what helped one of the most powerful men in history stay grounded, and how you can apply it to your life. Start with purpose. I remember a morning, not too long ago. I sat at the edge of my bed, the sun barely rising, my coffee growing cold beside me. The house was quiet. But inside, I felt a storm. I had this strange heaviness in my chest, not from sadness, not from fear, just emptiness. Like I was doing everything, but none of it meant anything. Checking emails. Running errands. Talking to people. But deep down, I was asking myself a silent question: why am I even doing all this? If you're over 40 like me, maybe you felt it too. Life gets busy. Responsibilities pile up. But somewhere along the way, we stop asking ourselves, what truly matters to me? That's when I turned to the writings of Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't just a Roman emperor, he was a man fighting daily battles, not with swords, but with his own mind. One of his most powerful reminders was this: at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I must go to work as a human being. It hit me. Discipline isn't just about getting things done. It's about knowing why you're doing them in the first place. I realized I had let the noise of the world drown out my inner voice. I was chasing goals I never chose. Living a life that looked full, but felt empty. So I asked myself, what am I really here to do? It wasn't an easy answer. It didn't come in a flash of lightning. It came slowly, through quiet reflection. Through walks without my phone. Through writing in a cheap notebook every night, asking the same question over and over: what truly matters? Over time, my purpose became clearer, not perfect, but clearer. For me, it was to live simply. To help others through my words. To be fully present with the people I love. And once I knew that, everything changed. I no longer needed to push myself every morning. Because my purpose pulled me. You see, when your actions are aligned with your purpose, self-discipline isn't forced. It becomes natural. Like water flowing downhill. It doesn't mean life gets easier. But it becomes more meaningful. Even the hard days feel worth it. So if you're feeling stuck or lost, Don't reach for another productivity hack. Don't beat yourself up for not being motivated. Start by asking yourself, what is my purpose right now, in this season of my life? It might be caring for your family. It might be healing from something painful. It might be building something small, but important. Whatever it is, write it down. Keep it close. Read it each morning. Let it guide your choices. In the previous lesson, we talked about the power of small daily steps. But steps without direction will only lead you in circles. Purpose is the compass. And when you begin with that compass in your hand, something shifts. You stop rushing. You start living. Now, with that purpose in your heart, let's explore the next lesson, how to count on yourself, even when the world lets you down. Because once you know where you're going, you must also trust that you're strong enough to walk the path. Count on yourself. There was a time in my life when I relied on everyone except myself. I thought, if I just find the right mentor, the right partner, the right plan, maybe then I'll finally have it together. I waited. I hoped. But life, it doesn't always send rescuers. Sometimes, it sends silence. And in that silence, you hear a truth that's hard to swallow: no one is coming. One night, after a long day of disappointments, I sat alone with a glass of water. Not whiskey. Just water. And I whispered to myself, if it's going to change, it has to start with me. That was the moment I stopped outsourcing my strength. And I started learning what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It's not that we don't need others. We do. We need love. We need community. But when it comes to your discipline, your choices, your growth, no one can walk that road for you. I used to blame my childhood. Blame my job. Blame the people who hurt me. And maybe some of that was fair. But Stoicism taught me something radical: blame gives you nothing. But responsibility gives you power. When I started counting on myself, I didn't become perfect. But I became reliable. I kept small promises, like waking up when I said I would. Finishing what I started. Not needing applause to feel proud of my efforts. That's when something inside shifted. I didn't feel like a leaf in the wind anymore. I felt like a tree. Rooted. Steady. Quietly growing. You don't need to be loud to be strong. You don't need to be flawless to be dependable. Start small. Pick one habit. One promise. And keep it no matter what. Not because someone's watching, but because you are. This, my friend, is what Stoicism means when it says, count on yourself. It's not arrogance. It's not pride. It's dignity. The kind that says, even if no one claps, I will still rise. You already have what you need inside you. The courage. The reason. The will. It's been there all along, just waiting for you to stop searching outward and start listening inward. And when you start walking that path, day by day, you'll notice something powerful: you begin to trust yourself again. You become the kind of person others can rely on. Because first, you chose to rely on yourself. And once you know you can count on yourself, you're ready for the next lesson: showing up every day. Not perfectly. Not loudly. Just consistently. Because real strength isn't proven in grand moments. It's built in the quiet habit of showing up, again and again. Show up every day. There are days I don't feel like doing anything. The body is tired. The mind is cloudy. And the world feels heavy. You know the days I mean. When even the smallest task feels like a mountain. When you ask yourself, does any of this even matter? I've had mornings like that. Plenty. But there's something I've learned, slowly, quietly. Not from motivation, not from inspiration, but from Stoicism. Just show up. Not for the applause. Not because you feel like it, but because your life depends on it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste the rest of your life speculating about others, unless it helps you do something useful. Just do what needs to be done." He didn't say, "Do it perfectly." He didn't say, "Do it with joy." He said, "Do what needs to be done." I used to think discipline meant going big, pushing harder, doing more. But now, I know, discipline is in the everyday decision to show up, even when you don't want to. Like writing a single page in your journal. Like choosing water over wine. Like making that one phone call you've been avoiding. Some days, I only do the bare minimum. And you know what? That's okay. Because showing up isn't about intensity. It's about consistency. The Stoics weren't superhuman. They had pain, doubts, off days. But they showed up anyway because their virtue mattered more than their mood. When I was younger, I chased fireworks. Now, in my 40s, I've come to appreciate the quiet glow of a candle burning steadily, day after day. That's what showing up looks like. You don't need to run the marathon. You just need to lace up your shoes. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to face it. There's a kind of peace in this rhythm. No drama. No pressure. Just presence. And little by little, day by day, you build a life that holds itself together. Not because every moment was perfect, but because you were present through all of it. So if today feels hard, don't run. Don't hide. Just show up. Take one step. Even a slow one. Even a tired one. Because every time you show up, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. And over time, those votes add up. They become a life of strength, of grace, of quiet power. Now that you've begun showing up, you're ready for the next lesson. One that most people avoid but the Stoics embraced, voluntary hardship. Because sometimes, to grow stronger, we must choose discomfort before life forces it upon us. Practice voluntary hardship. I used to do everything I could to avoid discomfort. I liked my coffee just right. I turned up the heat at the first sign of cold. I avoided hard conversations. And when life got tough, I distracted myself: TV, snacks, noise, anything to escape. But over time, I realized something strange: the more I avoided discomfort, the weaker I felt. Not in body, but in spirit. Then one day, I came across a line from Marcus Aurelius: "You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each achieves its goal as far as possible, and no one can keep you from this." And I started wondering, what if I stopped running from discomfort? What if I chose it on purpose? So I began with something small. I skipped breakfast once a week. Walked in the cold without a jacket. Turned off my phone for a full day. Nothing dramatic. Just little acts of discomfort, chosen voluntarily. And you know what happened? I didn't get weaker. I got stronger. Not louder. Just steadier. The Stoics believed that voluntary hardship was like training for the soul. You practice pain so when life brings real pain, you're ready. You step into discomfort so when suffering visits, you're not shocked by it. It doesn't break you, because you've met it before. I think about this often now. We live in a world built for convenience. Everything is one tap away. Instant delivery. Instant entertainment. But real growth? It's not instant. It's uncomfortable. It's slow. It's often lonely. That's why practicing hardship matters. It reminds you that you don't need everything to go your way. You don't need comfort to be calm. You don't need perfect conditions to keep showing up. And perhaps more importantly, voluntary discomfort helps you appreciate what you already have. Go a day without hot water, and suddenly, a warm shower feels like a gift. Go a day without speaking, and your next conversation feels sacred. Gratitude grows when you stop taking ease for granted. So I keep doing it. Tiny, quiet acts of chosen hardship. Not to suffer, but to sharpen, to strengthen, to remind myself that I am not fragile. And neither are you. You have more strength than you know. But strength doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in choice. The choice to step into the cold, into the silence, into the unknown. And when you do, you carry that strength into everything else. So today, ask yourself, where can I practice discomfort on purpose? And when life throws real adversity your way, you'll already be standing. Not because it's easy, but because you trained for it. And now that you've trained your body and mind through hardship, you're ready to learn one of the most liberating Stoic truths of all, the dichotomy of control, knowing what's yours to change, and what's not. The dichotomy of control. There was a time I used to carry the whole world on my shoulders. Every bad headline made my chest tighten. Every careless word from someone lingered in my mind for days. I'd try to control everything, people's opinions, outcomes, even the weather. And the more I tried, the more exhausted I became. It felt like I was swimming upstream, against a river I couldn't stop. Then I found a line in Epictetus's teaching, echoed by Marcus Aurelius: some things are up to us, and some are not. That's it. One simple idea. But it changed everything for me. Because for the first time, I saw the difference between what I could control, and what I never could. I could control my thoughts, my choices, my attitude. But I could not control how others treated me. I could not control the economy. I could not control growing older, or what tomorrow might bring. So I started practicing what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. Each time I felt stress, I asked myself, is this within my control? If yes, I took action. If no, I took a breath, and let it go. Sounds simple, right? But it's not easy. Letting go isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It takes strength to admit, this is not mine to fix. I remember a time when someone I loved deeply made a choice that hurt both of us. I replayed it in my head over and over. Wondered what I could have done differently. But no matter how hard I thought, nothing changed. That's when I remembered, you have power over your mind, not external events. So I shifted. I stopped trying to rewrite the past. And I started focusing on who I wanted to be in the present. I chose to respond with patience. To speak with kindness. To forgive, not because they deserved it but because I did. You see, when you focus on what's within your control, you stop reacting, and you start choosing. You take back your peace. You reclaim your time. And slowly, you become unshakable. Life will always throw things at you: illness, rejection, uncertainty. But none of these can touch the part of you that's yours alone, your reason, your virtue, your will. That's what the Stoics knew. That's what I'm still learning day by day. So if something's weighing on you right now, pause. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? And if it is, carry it with courage. If it's not, release it with grace. Because self-discipline isn't just about doing more. Sometimes, it's about letting go. Now that you've learned what's in your power, you're ready to hear something that may sting a little. But it's one of the most empowering truths Stoicism offers: never play the victim. Because once you stop seeing yourself as powerless, you begin to see just how powerful you really are. Never play the victim. There was a season in my life when I felt like the world was against me. Nothing seemed to go right. People let me down. Doors closed. Opportunities passed me by. And I found myself thinking thoughts like, Why does this always happen to me? Why can't I catch a break? It was subtle. But looking back, I had started to see myself as a victim. And honestly, it felt comforting. When you blame the world, you don't have to change. When you point the finger, you don't have to grow. You just sit in the pain, waiting for someone to fix it for you. But no one came. And deep down, I knew I couldn't live like that anymore. Then I read a passage in Meditations where Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." At first, I didn't understand it. But slowly, it made sense. It wasn't about denying pain. It was about refusing to let that pain define me. You see, life will hurt you. People will say the wrong things. You will be misunderstood. But the Stoics believed, suffering is not in the event itself, it's in how we interpret it. That truth hit hard. Because suddenly, I had to admit, I wasn't powerless. I was choosing my response. Even when I didn't realize it. So I started asking myself new questions. What can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? What would the stronger version of me do right now? And everything changed. No, my life didn't magically improve. But I got stronger. More honest. More grounded. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I stopped replaying the past like a broken tape. And I started reclaiming my story. Because here's the truth no one tells you, you can't control what happens. But you always control what happens next. Victimhood is a cage. Responsibility is the key. And Stoicism hands it to you every single day. So if you've been hurt, acknowledge it. Feel it. But don't live there. Don't let one chapter become your whole book. Don't let one person's cruelty become your identity. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. And when you stop playing the victim, you start playing the hero of your own life. Now that you've taken back your power, you're ready to practice something even more difficult, delaying gratification. Because once you stop blaming others, you can finally begin building the future you've always wanted brick by quiet brick. Practice delayed gratification. When I was younger, I wanted everything now. The promotion, the praise, the results, the peace. I thought, if I don't get it soon, maybe it's not meant for me. But life doesn't work that way. At least, not life that's worth living. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave it a name. Delayed gratification, the ability to wait, to hold back, to choose long-term meaning over short-term pleasure. Marcus Aurelius never wrote about chasing excitement. He wrote about endurance, discipline, waiting with purpose. He believed that if you give in to every impulse, you lose control not just of your actions, but of your freedom. A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions, he wrote. And I believe that's true. The first time I really practiced delayed gratification wasn't some heroic moment. It was me, sitting in my car, staring at a fast food drive-thru. I had a long day. I was tired. And I really wanted something greasy and comforting. But then I asked myself, what do I want more? This 5-minute fix? Or the energy and clarity I've been building slowly? And for once, I drove away. It sounds silly. But that small moment felt like a victory. Because that night, I proved to myself, I'm not a slave to my cravings. You see, every time you say no to what's easy, you're saying yes to something greater. When you save money instead of spending it, you say yes to peace of mind. When you stay quiet in an argument, you say yes to wisdom over pride. When you go to bed early, write that page, skip that drink, you say yes to becoming the person you respect. That's what Stoicism is really about. Not denying pleasure, but choosing it wisely. And the more you delay gratification, the more powerful you feel inside. Because now, You're in charge. Not your habits. Not your impulses. You. So here's something I do now. Each morning, I choose one thing to delay. Something small. Could be checking my phone. Could be reaching for a second cup of coffee. Could be venting when I'm frustrated. And in that pause, I grow stronger. Because discipline isn't loud. It's quiet. It's in the space between wanting and waiting. So ask yourself today, what can I say no to now, so I can say yes to something better later? And remember, each no is not a punishment. It's a powerful choice. One that your future self will look back on, and quietly say, thank you. Now that you've learned how to resist the noise within, it's time to face a deeper challenge, the noise outside. Because no matter how grounded you are, there will always be voices trying to pull you off course. That's why the next lesson is so important. Ignore the naysayers. Ignore the naysayers. When I first started making changes in my life, I thought people would cheer me on. Eat healthier. Wake up earlier. Cut back on distractions. Focus on purpose. But to my surprise, not everyone liked it. Some rolled their eyes. Some laughed behind my back. Others said things like, "You're taking life too seriously." Or, "Come on, just relax a little." At first, it bothered me. I doubted myself. I questioned, am I doing too much? Am I trying too hard? But then I remembered something Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. And I realized, it wasn't their voice that was the problem. It was mine listening. You see, the path of growth is quiet. The path of self-discipline is lonely. And people fear what they don't understand. When you begin to rise, it can make others uncomfortable, not because you're better than them, but because you're doing what they're afraid to do. So they project. They mock. They doubt. But here's the truth, you don't need their permission. Your life, your choices, your growth, none of it is up for public vote. You are not here to please the crowd. You are here to live by your principles. To walk your path, even if no one walks beside you. It took me years to learn that. And even now, I have to remind myself. Because the critics will always be there. On social media. In your family. In your head. But the Stoics taught us to return to reason. To evaluate the source. To ask, does this opinion come from wisdom, or from fear? And if it's fear, if it's noise, if it pulls you away from your purpose, let it go. Not in anger. Not in defiance. Just silence. That silence is strength. That silence is self-possession. And once you stop chasing validation, you find something better: clarity. You stop trying to prove, and start simply becoming. So here's what I tell myself now, whenever the doubters appear: I am not here to be understood. I am here to live with virtue. Let your actions speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your calm speak louder than their noise. And if you stay the course long enough, some of those naysayers will come back, not to mock you, but to ask how you did it. But by then, you'll be too focused to notice. Now that you've learned to protect your energy from outside noise, it's time to direct that energy inward towards something powerful, emulating the wise. Because the best way to grow is to walk in the footsteps of those who've already climbed. Find wise people to emulate. When I was younger, I thought I had to figure everything out on my own. I wore my independence like a badge of honor. I don't need anyone's help, I used to say. I'll find my own way. And I did. But the way was longer. And lonelier. And often, harder than it needed to be. It wasn't until I turned 40 that something shifted. I looked back and realized I had learned my biggest lessons not from books, but from people. From my grandfather, who never raised his voice, but led with quiet dignity. From a former boss, who treated janitors the same way he treated CEOs. From a friend who chose integrity over convenience every single time. And then I found the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius. Epictetus. Seneca. These weren't just philosophers. They were living examples of what strength, humility, and wisdom looked like. When you find someone living as you wish to live, look to them as a model. Epictetus said that. And I took it to heart. So now, instead of asking, what should I do? I ask, what would the wiser version of me do? Or better yet, what would Marcus do? What would Seneca say? This shift changed everything. Because when you emulate the wise, you shorten the distance between where you are, and who you want to become. But here's the thing, it's not about copying people. It's about studying their character. Watching how they move through difficulty. How they stay calm under pressure. How they treat others when no one is watching. And you don't need perfect role models. You just need honest ones. The truth is, everyone is modeling something. Some model anger. Some model fear. Some model strength. The question is, who are you watching? And more importantly, who is watching you? Because whether we know it or not, someone's always learning from us too. When I started choosing better role models, I didn't just grow. I started becoming someone worth emulating. That's the Stoic way. We don't just absorb wisdom, we pass it on, through action. Through presence. Through example. So look around. Find someone wiser. Someone calmer. Someone grounded. And don't be afraid to follow their lead. Because when we walk in the footsteps of the wise, we leave a clearer path for those who come after us. And once you've found your guides, once you've started walking the right path, there's one more practice that will keep you steady, reflecting at the end of each day. Because the wise don't just live well. They look back and ask, did I live today the way I said I would? Honestly review your day. Every night before I go to bed, I sit with the light dimmed, the noise turned off, and I ask myself a simple question: did I live today the way I meant to? Not. Was I productive? Not. Did I win? But honestly, was I the man I said I wanted to be? There was a time I avoided this question. Because I didn't like the answers. I'd scroll through my phone until I fell asleep, distracted. Disconnected. Detached from the day I just lived. But then I read what Marcus Aurelius did every night. How he wrote to himself quietly, without judgment, reflecting not to punish, but to improve. That's what Stoicism is about. Not perfection, but progress through awareness. So now, I do what he did. I sit with myself, not as a critic, but as a friend. A guide. A student of my own behavior. And I ask, where did I act with patience? Where did I lose control? Did I speak with honesty? Did I choose what was right, or what was easy? Some nights, I feel proud. Other nights, I feel disappointed. But no matter the answer, I remind myself, this is how growth begins. Because if we don't reflect, we repeat. And if we lie to ourselves, we stay lost. The Stoics knew that the greatest accountability doesn't come from rules, it comes from inner dialogue. It comes from standing in front of your own conscience, with nothing to hide, and nothing to prove. Just the honest truth. And I've learned something beautiful: even small corrections done daily change the direction of your life. A kind word instead of a harsh one. A pause instead of a reaction. A step back instead of a step over the line. It all adds up. And so, each night, I close my eyes with clarity. Not because I was perfect, but because I paid attention. Because I know that tomorrow, I get to try again. Not starting from zero but from a wiser place. So tonight, I invite you to do the same. Don't just crash into sleep. Take 5 quiet minutes. Ask yourself, did I live today with intention? Did I act according to my values? And whatever the answer, use it not to shame yourself but to sharpen your path. That's how self-discipline becomes a way of life. Not a battle, but a habit. Not a burden, but a compass. And when you do this every night, you'll begin to notice something powerful. You're not just going through the days anymore. You're growing through them. Self-discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It's about becoming someone you can rely on, someone your future self will thank you for. Marcus Aurelius never claimed to be perfect. But he strived daily. Quietly. Stoically. If these 10 principles resonated with you, don't just nod and move on. Pick one. Practice it today. Because transformation isn't a moment, it's a direction. Speech balloon comment below, which principle hit you the hardest? Bell subscribe if you want more Stoic wisdom to guide your days. Folded hands, your support keeps this journey alive. Still struggling with motivation? Watch, why Marcus Aurelius said, stop waiting for tomorrow.